Okay, so you want to buy a baseball team. Here's the strangest part of this deal. Legally, baseball doesn't have to play by the same rules as every other business in America. In 1922, the Supreme Court decided baseball wasn't interstate commerce, so federal antitrust law just doesn't apply to it. Boxing got rejected for the same exemption. Football got rejected. Baseball alone kept it. Through 1953, through 1972, and basically through today. That's the business you're buying into. A legal monopoly, blessed by the Supreme Court, that no other American industry is allowed to have. And here's the second strangest part. None of that has much to do with whether the team is actually good at baseball. Let's start with what you're paying. Tier 1. The cheap seats, relatively speaking. The Miami Marlins, valued at $1.05 billion, are the least valuable franchise in the league. The Tampa Bay Rays sit just above them at $1.25 billion. Both are real Major League franchises, with real World Series banners between them, worth barely a tenth of the team at the top. Tier 2, the middle of the pack. The average MLB team is now worth $2.6 billion, up 8% over last year alone. That's not from one good season. That's the baseline appreciation of just owning a franchise. Tier 3, the top of the market. The New York Yankees, $8.2 billion, the first baseball team ever to clear the $8 billion mark. The Los Angeles Dodgers, $6.8 billion, up 25% in a single year, the second most valuable team for the 14th year running. And scarcity here is by design, not accident. The last time MLB added new franchises at all was 1998, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Arizona Diamondbacks. 28 years and counting without a single new seat at the table. You're not buying into a growing market. You're buying one of a fixed number of seats that the existing owners control the guest list for. And the actual sale prices tell the same story, climbing every time the gavel comes down. The Dodgers sold for $2 billion in 2012. The Mets sold to hedge fund manager Steve Cohen for $2.4 billion in 2020, a record. The Orioles sold for $1.73 billion in 2024, at just 5.3 times the team's revenue, a noticeably lower multiple than other U.S. sports leagues are commanding right now. Translation: even baseball's cheap deals are inflating. Now, the part nobody explains before you sign anything: how you're even allowed to buy in. You don't just write a check. Any sale needs approval from 3/4 of the other owners. Your new business partners get veto power before you own a single share. And once you're in, you inherit that antitrust exemption, which Congress poked exactly one hole in. The 1998 Curt Flood Act lets players sue over labor issues. That's it. Relocation, broadcast territories, expansion, all of it still untouchable by the laws that would absolutely apply to any other industry doing the same thing. Relocation works the same way. Moving a franchise needs the same ownership supermajority, which is exactly why it happens so rarely. The Montreal Expos went from the best record in baseball during the strike-shortened 1994 season to a team nobody would fund, and finally moved to Washington as the Nationals in 2005, the only relocation in 3 decades. The Athletics' move to Las Vegas, approved in 2024, is just the second. So how does the team actually make money? 3 engines. First, national television. The league negotiates one deal, splits it 30 ways, and every owner gets a check regardless of how their team performed. Second, local revenue. Tickets, concessions, parking, and the local TV deal run through a redistribution formula. Every team pays 48% of its net local revenue into a shared pool. The pool gets divided by 30, and small market teams typically pull out far more than they put in. Third, the luxury tax, officially the competitive balance tax, a penalty for spending too much, not too little, that quietly functions as a salary cap nobody's allowed to call a salary cap. And that local TV piece is currently falling apart. The company that ran most of MLB's regional sports networks, Diamond Sports, filed for bankruptcy and spent nearly 2 years in Chapter 11 before emerging as Main Street Sports Group at the start of 2025. Along the way, the Padres and Diamondbacks got dropped entirely and had MLB run their broadcasts directly. By the end of the 2024 season, the Guardians, Twins, Reds, and Brewers had joined them. The safe, boring local TV money that funded this sport for decades is now a coin flip. Here's the mechanic almost nobody outside the league office understands, and it explains a lot of bad baseball you've watched. The revenue-sharing pool isn't a gift. It comes with a spending requirement. A team has to field a payroll worth at least 150% of whatever it collects in revenue sharing, or the players' union can file a grievance. The Oakland Athletics have been investigated for this exact thing, fielding a roster bad enough to look like cost-cutting while pocketing the shared revenue anyway. Owner John Fisher took heat from his fellow owners for it directly. One called it out by name, saying the money is supposed to go toward player salaries, not profit. In 2025, the A's were required to carry roughly $105 million in payroll just to keep their full $70 million allotment. And here's the kicker on the A's specifically. While fielding one of the league's worst rosters and playing in a minor league ballpark in Sacramento on their way to Las Vegas, their franchise value jumped 50% in a single year to $1.8 billion. The team got worse. The asset got more valuable. That's the whole paradox of this business in one franchise. Now, the cases. Because this league has produced both the ugliest fire sale in modern sports and the most expensive temper tantrum in baseball. The fire sale. The 1997 Florida Marlins win the World Series in October. By the following season, ownership has traded away nearly the entire roster to cut payroll. It happens again 20 years later. New owners Derek Jeter and Bruce Sherman inherit a franchise loaded with debt, and within months trade away reigning MVP Giancarlo Stanton's $265 million contract to the Yankees, along with Christian Yelich, Marcell Ozuna, and D. Gordon. Attendance the following year drops to the worst in the league. The team is now the least valuable franchise in baseball, at $1.05 billion, which again is still a billion-dollar business. The temper tantrum. Steve Cohen's Mets. In 2025, the Mets carried a payroll of $346.7 million and ate a luxury tax bill of $91.6 million, the second highest penalty in the sport. Under Cohen, the team has now paid $320.3 million in luxury taxes over 4 years combined. $250 million in pure penalty money, on top of the payroll itself, just for the privilege of spending more than the league wants you to. So let's run the numbers two ways. Optimistic scenario. You buy in at the bottom of the market. Marlins territory, call it $1.1 billion, and just hold. League average value growth is running 8% a year right now, with outliers like the Dodgers posting 25%. No spending discipline required, no playoff appearances required. You collect your national TV check and your revenue sharing allotment, and let the scarcity of 30 franchises do the rest. Realistic scenario. You actually try to win. You spend past the luxury tax threshold, currently $241 million, and the penalties scale up the more you exceed it and the longer you stay over it. Cohen's $320 million 4-year tax bill is what trying hard costs at the top of the market. Spend too little instead, and the union can come after your revenue sharing money. There's no comfortable middle setting. Here's the takeaway. An MLB team is not really a baseball business. It's a federally blessed scarcity asset that happens to have a baseball team attached to it. Win or lose, spend or hoard, the value goes up almost regardless, because there are only 30 of these in existence, and the Supreme Court made sure nobody can just start a 31st. The S&P 500 also goes up nearly every year, gives you full liquidity, and doesn't require 3/4 of your competitors' permission to buy in. But it also never lets you stand in the dugout and call yourself the owner.